How's it going, friends? It's Cameron from Venus Theory, and welcome back to another episode of The Sauce, the show where I talk about gear, plugins, and my own 13 herbs and spices when it comes to music production. For pretty much my entire life, I've had dogs, and now I have a dog of my own. Her name is Callie, and Callie is part beagle. As you may or may not know, one of the things about beagles is they really like to smell things out and chase them down, and if they find something particularly disgusting, they love to roll around in it and get it all over themselves. So right after I finished setting everything up to start filming this video, Callie started whining and crying at me that she needs to go out. So we go outside, and pretty much immediately she locates the biggest, nastiest pile of goose poop she can find and rolls all over her and gets it all over herself. So then I had to stand outside and wait for my dog to go to the bathroom while she's covered in poop, bring her back inside, give her a bath, and then come back and start filming this video, which put a pretty significant delay in my day. Speaking of delays, today we're here to take a look at the new delay unit from my friends over at Baby Audio called Comeback Kid. Baby Audio have also been on the channel before with their plugins iHeart NY and Super VHS. Before we get into it, the folks at Baby Audio have also agreed to sponsor a giveaway of their new Comeback Kid delay plugin, so if you want to enter for the giveaway, you can join my Discord with the link down below, go to the giveaways chat, and enter with the emoji on the giveaway bot. This giveaway will last for 2 weeks from the date this video goes live. Baby Audio described Comeback Kid as a hands-on delay with an analog flavor, and I really like that they've continued this design trend of a kind of one knob per function interface, and it doesn't have all this menu diving or hidden anything. It's just all there, and it's easy to quickly put on, tweak some stuff, and then move on with your life. Comeback Kid is a delay engine with 14 one-knob style effects, and I really like that this is more than just another delay plugin. I don't know about you guys, but I have quite a few delay plugins, and more or less they all kind of do the exact same thing. One of the cool things about Comeback Kid is all of these effects are tailor-made for this delay, so it's not like it's just another delay with a reverb in it. It's a reverb that's designed for this and unique to this unit. One of my other favorite things about Comeback Kid is not only is it a delay, but it can also act as a color box similar to their Super VHS plugin. Further to that point, if you use Comeback Kid as a color box in combination with Super VHS, I find something really kind of magical and unique happens, and it's really nice for like lo-fi productions or just generally adding a bit of mojo to things. So let's hop into the DAW and check out Comeback Kid. Alright, so here we are in the DAW with Comeback Kid. So first up, I wanted to break down the UI and functions for you guys so you understand what everything does. Then I wanted to show you a couple examples I've cooked up with this effect, including how to use it just as a color box signal processor thing. So here is Comeback Kid. This is the full plugin UI, and one quick thing I want to note, if you have a larger format display or smaller display, you can toggle the UI size with this switch up here in the top right. So we have a small version and a big version. In terms of the UI itself, like I said, it's very one knob per function. It's very straightforward. There's no really hidden anything to talk about, and I like the style once again. They really do have good graphics, and for some reason this reminds me a lot of Borderlands. I don't know what it is about like the shading of it, but I really dig that. So Comeback Kid is broken up here into 5 sections. We have the shaper, stereo, delay, flavor, and output. Let's kick things off with the shaper section here. First up, we have low and high cut. These are analog modeled filters, and they do exactly what you would expect. They cut the low and cut the high. Then we have attack and sustain. This is actually something I didn't know I needed in my life until I got this plugin. These are actually transient shapers for the delayed signal path. This is something I've actually never seen in a delay before. If there's another delay out there that offers this, let me know in the comments, because this is such a cool idea because it allows you to control the delayed signal in a unique way. So if you wanted like a slapback delay effect that's really sharp and attacky, then you could use the transient shapers for that. Otherwise, if you wanted something that's a bit more subtle and kind of weaves around the sound, you could dial off the attack and maybe up the sustain. I find this is actually really useful, and in stuff especially like vocals, if you have maybe a vocal that has a lot of consonants in it, being able to duck out the attack on the delayed signal path is just a complete lifesaver, and something that now I've started experimenting with in other delays that I like, where I'll use a delay and then I will use it at 100% wet and then add a transient shaper, because it's just such a brilliant idea, and I don't know why more places haven't done this. Down here we have the stereo section. This includes wider. This widens the delays through left and right time variations, so this just adds a little kind of subtle warble, or it can get really kind of broken and destroyed. It's kind of a cool effect. Then we have richer. This adds dimension to your delays through left and right pitch variations. This is a lot like a tape delay, that kind of slow, warbly echo you get. This is the way to do that. Then we have pan. This pans the delayed signals in the stereo image, so you could pan it entirely left or entirely right. And this is cool because you could then use 2 Comeback Kids, one on the left and one on the right, and have 2 completely independent delays running. Then we have the mono switch here. This forces the delayed signal to be mono, so you can use this as kind of a mono summing grunge box, or just force it to be a mono delay if needed. In the delay section, this is all pretty self-explanatory. We have the time control. We have the controls here for the timing. So we have straight, dotted, triplet, and free. Free actually goes all the way down to 0.01 milliseconds, if we can do that. Yep. And then all the way up to 2500 milliseconds. So it's a very, very big range of different delays. And I like that you can get so short with it. I'll show you that in one of the examples here, but I really like delays that allow you to get incredibly short times with really high feedback because you can get some really cool kind of screechy, weird effects out of it. In the center, we have the ping pong switch, which enables a ping pong delay effect. Then we have the feedback control, which adjusts the amount of feedback. And then we move on to flavor. So first up here is the cheap switch. This degrades your delays with a custom 11-bit signal path, which is modeled after vintage digital units. And this is actually a really nice effect and something I like quite a bit when I'm using this as just kind of a straight up color box. I like to enable this, throw it in parallel, and just add a little bit of something to the sound. It's a pretty neat effect, and I really like just the character it adds because it's not like adding a bit crusher. It's just something a little bit different. Here we have tape, which just adds a nice tape saturation emulation. Then here we have the swirl, which adds movement to the delays with an analog modeled phasing effect. And this is really nice as well. It's just a really juicy sounding phaser. I dig that quite a bit. Finally, there is sauce here. This is actually something a little bit unique. This adds space to your delays with a touch of algorithmic reverb. It's another just kind of cheap and weird effect. It reminds me of the wash in Super VHS, but it's a lot shorter. And this is another thing I like to just throw in parallel sometimes. It's just this weird little grungy reverb thing and just another really cool way to add character to things. Finally, in the lower right, we have the output section. We have the ducker, which ducks the delayed signal out of the way of the dry signal, which is something I always appreciate when delays and reverbs include. We have a dry out control and a wet out control. Then we have the destiny switch here. So destiny is kind of unique. In the manual, it's described as leaving your delays to destiny for a less robotic, more human, and unpredictable vibe. And I believe this is just providing subtle randomization to, I think, all of the parameters. And it's not a super obvious effect, but once you do enable it, I find it does give a bit more variation and movement to the delay, which is nice. That being said, the effect of the destiny switch is very subtle, and I would have liked to see maybe an extra notch to this switch here, where we have like off, and then regular destiny, and then like XXL super destiny. It's one of those controls that does provide something, but I would like to just be able to dial in a bit more of it to make it just a bit more obvious and, you know, maybe dial it to the extreme just to see what happens. So that is Comeback Kid. First up here, I wanted to walk you through just using this as a standard delay. So first up here, I've got just a little synth patch I made in Dune. This is just kind of a regular acid synth line, nothing crazy. On this, I just have a regular Comeback Kid here with a little bit of filtering going on. I have the shaper enabled to get rid of the attack and up the sustain, and then I'm using quite a bit of the stereo processing here. I have ping pong mode enabled. It's on a quarter note, relatively high feedback. Cheap, tape, swirl, and sauce are all up. And then I have the wet ducked out just a little bit, and the ducker isn't doing anything. The destiny switch is off. So this is what it takes that synth line up to now. So as you can hear, there's quite a bit of modulation to it, which I really like. Let's take a listen to only the wet output. And then let's try that with the destiny switch enabled. So you hear there is a subtle difference. It's not too obvious, but there is just a bit more life and movement to it. To further this kind of modulated delay feel, I've added Super VHS here with a bit of heat because I just love the heat control inside of Super VHS. The magic switch, which is just a nice wide 80s chorus, drift is up a bit, and a little bit of wash, and you can get these really excellent super modulated delay things that are just really, I don't know, juicy and alive sounding. So in combination with Super VHS, you can get some really awesome sounds. To further demonstrate the amount of color and stuff that this adds, I've got a patch here in Dune 3. This is actually just a sine pluck. There's nothing else happening inside of Dune here, and it sounds like this. In the the comeback kit here, it's just another quarter note delay, a bit of filtering going on, the cheap is enabled, destiny is on, tape, swirl, and sauce are up a little bit, just a little bit of stereo stuff going on here, and the ping pong mode is enabled with a lower feedback. And once again, just a pure sine wave, and you'll really hear in the echoes and trails of things how this starts to get a lot more interesting. One other thing of note is the sustain is up and the attack is down on the shaper. And once again here, I've got this hooked up with another Super VHS, so this has a little bit of heat, no magic switch, a little bit of wash, and a good amount of drift just to add some extra modulation, which creates a really rich, full sound out of just a sine wave. So as I'm sure you can imagine, when you put this on a nice synth pad or something, you can get some very big, modulated, rich, organic sounds, and it doesn't really have any kind of overly digital feel to it. Next up, I have a more interesting example here with a lot of processing, as you can tell. This is a piano with a transient shaper. This feeds into a comeback kit with a very, very short time, 3.55 milliseconds, very high feedback, ping pong mode enabled. The shaper has the sustain cranked, attack is all the way down, a lot of low cut, good amount of high cut. A lot of the wider here, some good tape saturation, not much swirl, quite a bit of the sauce here, and the destiny is up. A little bit of ducker just to clear things out. Then that feeds into a Super VHS with a lot of heat, a lot of drift, and a lot of wash. No magic switch. This goes into a cloud seed, which is just a really big ultra mega washy reverb. This goes into a filter, which is a high pass. This goes into another filter, which is a low pass. And then this goes into a limiter here just to squeeze this all back together. So before anything happens, it sounds like this. So just a, piano. Once we enable all this, things start to get a lot more interesting. So as a sound design tool, being able to use really, really short delay times with a lot of feedback and that subtle bit of modulation, as well as just the extra kind of character and grit this adds, you can get some really interesting sounds, and it's a lot of fun. Finally, to close things off, I wanted to show you guys how you can utilize Comeback Kid solely as a color box or signal processor. It's one of my favorite things about it outside of the transient shaper. You can bypass the delay and use this just as a set of one knob effects, which is really cool. So here I've got just addictive drums open. It's just a dry kit. There's really nothing happening. And then that's going into a FET presser here. This is just making it nice and smashy and loud. So with just that compressor going, this is what the drums sound like. So just some pretty standard compressed drums. This goes into a Comeback Kid here, and to enable this as a color box, you can just double click on Comeback Kid and it will set the delay to off. This means there's no delay and you're just getting the effects. This also removes the dry output and leaves only the wet output. So here I've got a filter going on, a transient shaper, attack up, sustain down to make these really just kind of snappy and aggressive, a lot of tape saturation, no swirl, no sauce, no panning, no anything else. This is just using it as a bit of grit with the destiny switch enabled, so it just adds a little bit of character and color. So after we add this to the drums, this is what we get. Which is pretty cool, and the cheap here can add a bit of flavor as well, so let's enable cheap and add a bit of sauce. So So that's another great way to add some character. To further this, I've added a super VHS, a lot of heat, a good amount of drift, and that's really it. And then on the very, very end of everything here, I have another comeback kid. This is acting as just a very fast slapback echo with a tiny bit of feedback at 114 milliseconds. The shaper is enabled with the attack down, sustain up, another filter going on here, a little bit more tape, and then maybe we could add just like some sauce and swirl here, and the wet is down slightly. So now we've got a bunch of color from the first comeback kid, some more stuff from Super VHS, and then another set of things happening from a slapback delay and another comeback kid. So by combining all of this, this is what we get. So I think that does it for my overview on Comeback Kid. I think all things considered, it's a really nice sounding delay, and I really like that it can also be used as just a color character processor box, which adds a lot of value. Comeback Kid is currently on sale with the intro price being only $29, and at full price it's $49. And I think either way, that's a really good value considering the amount of stuff you get out of it, because you're also getting a delay, a transient shaper, a nice saturator, a cool kind of lo-fi cruncherator box, and if you can get it on the intro price sale, I think that's a really good deal. Similar to Super VHS, Comeback Kid gets high marks all around for me. I like that it's easy to use, I like that there's not a lot of menu diving, and I like that it just adds a lot of character, which is something that's missing from a lot of plugins, and I think a lot of the times they're too subtle in their approach, and Baby Audio really seems to get it right in not being almost goofy with it, but adding enough character to where it's something that warrants being used in a project. And I think that wraps it up for this video, so big shout out to the folks at Baby Audio for hooking me up with a copy of Comeback Kid, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon.